Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of the Jams and Tea podcast, where we spin the jams and spill the tea. Oh, wait a minute. That's not what the video title says, depending on where it is. Shit.
Whatever stupid device you're watching it on.
There's fucking, what is this? What is that title? Why are you not talking about music? Well, let me tell you, August and I, we're a couple of weeaboos, and let me tell you, we consume a whole lot of anime, and why not have a venue for talking about it? Because we don't ever shut our fucking traps about this shit.
Yeah.
And
everyone else is
the internet.
pissed off. Everyone else in the podcast is pissed off enough at us, so we'll vent.
This podcast was absolutely born out of the fact that every time we talk about anime, one of the other people in the group chat will be like, "I have no idea what you're fucking talking about." So
yeah,
you have the rest of the Jams D podcast to thank for that. But welcome to the first episode, the pilot of the RubberGum anime podcast, where slogan pending. But in this instance, I would say that this title was born out of a reference to Hunter x Hunter, where August is the rubber and I am the gum.
Yeah.
But what we are going to do here is basically the idea with this podcast is largely, broadly speaking, so that August and I can pretty much have an excuse to talk about whatever we want, because anime is a very diverse medium. You got series, you got movies, you got OVAs, old, new, tons of fucking shit to cover, and we want to focus on specific topics and themes that are not necessarily related to new releases. We just kind of want to go where the wind takes us because we have a lot to say. August and I are active in the anime Twitter community, which consists of nothing but people posting screen caps of people's eyes from Hunter x Hunter and manga versus Netflix adaptation posts.
Or these are the best MCs.
Yeah, these are the best main characters, and Lelouch is always there, Light Yagami is always there, and it's like Goku and the fucker from Black Clover, like some fucking thing.
And if they're cultured like Edward Elric in there.
Yeah, like one good solid pick, like a Spike.
One good character.
Yeah, but today we are doing our pilot episode, which is something a little bit less high concept than what we want to do. We have a lot of projects in the working right now for stuff that we very specifically want to cover that's very expansive, because lots of shows are really long. Some of them have different adaptations, yada, yada, yada. But we wanted to sort of bridge the gap here and talk about something that interests us and talk about something that's quasi-relatively new, but without biting off more than we can chew. But in this first segment here, like the Jams and Tea podcast, normally, if we have something to talk about that we've been watching with recently that like wasn't something that we were planning on originally talking about, we're just going to sort of have an opening segment where we talk about what we have been watching. But because this is the first episode, and because you may not necessarily know what our tastes in this specific artistic medium, just to get a grapple off of where we're coming from, we are briefly going to go over our favorite anime, just so you all can get to know us better, because clearly by there's 80 episodes of the Jams D podcast, our music taste by now. There's that. So yeah, we're just gonna get started in this first segment here.
We're just gonna go through like 5 favorite shows and a couple miscellaneous ones.
It's basically our personal canon, but the top 5 is the imperative.
Top 5's important personal canon stuff. We'll just like say the title of, not really dissect too much.
Yeah.
But the top 5 will give you like a paragraph or 2 on.
Yeah. There you go.
So.
Why don't we take turns? But what we should do is I will say the ones that aren't in my top 5, and you can list off all the ones that aren't, and then you can do your 5, I'll do my 5, you'll do your 4, my 4.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. So just this is sort of a list in progress, just because once you become a functioning adult, you have a lot less free time in your life to watch anime. So some of the shows that I loved when I was, say, August's age or younger are shows that I haven't seen in a while and that I might think of something different. So I am doing this list as best of an approximation as I can, because I have seen some things recently, but other times, I don't really have the spare time to watch fucking 50 episodes of a show that I love just to see if it holds up. But best to my recollection, the ones that aren't in my top 5 right now are the original adaptation of Berserk. We have Serial Experiments Lane, Shiki, which is a lesser seen vampire adaptation, quasi-adaptation of Stephen King, which makes sense because, I'm me. Then we have Wolf's Rain, Satoshi Kon's Paranoia Agent. We have Made in Abyss. We have Cowboy Bebop and Psycho-Pass, and because fuck you, it's anime, Avatar: The Last Airbender. But yeah, that's the outside my canon picks. So
Yeah.
August, what about you?
So some of my outside the canon picks, I'll give a little shout out to also, because fuck you, it's anime, Avatar: The Last Airbender, all-time classic, Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann, JoJo Part 4 specifically, and what's one? Mob Psycho 100, why not?
Ooh, Mob Psycho's good pick.
So those are some outside of the like top canon for me, but
yeah.
Now our individual lists.
The list proper. Okay. My number 5 is going to be an anime that I feel is an underseen classic of the 2000s, which in my opinion was a premier decade for anime just because of how much fringe good shit we got. Like we had a lot of stuff sort of in like put in through the culture as like a response to the 90s where things were like really dark and edgy, and then things became a little bit less that. But if you look hard enough, you can find some of the best stuff, and one of the best things is Baccano. Baccano is a 12 or 13 long episode anime with an OVA at the end that is this weird Tarantino-y non-linear story that hops back and forth with a bunch of different characters. It's like watching something like Pulp Fiction, and it's basically this weird crime drama, but also like kind of a fantasy horror steampunk alternate history thing. Everybody's in the 1920s and everybody talks like a speakeasy, but it's also about like characters that are like, some of them are like immortal and old, and there's like this, the centerpiece of the show is surrounded by this train robbery sequence that everything is going on. It's about all these timelines intersect, and it's just it's all the things I love about like film and playing with that stuff, but in this show, and as a result it is my shit. You should watch it if you hadn't. So yeah, that's my 5.
Make a quick comment on Baccano. I have not seen the whole thing. I've seen it in parts, but I can attest to what you're saying. So my 5 is another 2000s classic, closer to the 2010s, that being Bakemonogatari, which little Oshino Shinobu sticker here. This is one of the most verbally dense shows ever made. It's on your first watch, it's like that 5 seconds backward button is going to be your best friend.
Yeah.
One of the most aesthetically pretty shows ever. The dialogue is all really sharply written. It's a very funny show, and also touches on some really great emotional beats. And I think it's just the pinnacle of that franchise, and just starts at the top, and I'd say for the most part stays on the top, but you can't beat the original.
I agree. I have not seen, I can't remember what the most recent Monogatari like thing was.
It's the last. If that description sounds appealing to you, check it out.
Yeah, again, that's one of the anime that I saw in high school that, again, I haven't seen recently, so my opinion is not final, but it's just one of those shows that's so energetic and invigorating. It's got that like roughness to it, but it's also like, it's definitely super intentional. Like the character designs in that show are fucking unbelievably good, and it's just fun. And like the way some people describe it is like it is really, really dense with like lore and metaphor and like all of this stuff, but it's also like if you just want a fun show about people like kicking the shit out of each other and like doing cool anime shit, it also does that too. So you can't lose with it.
And also what's great about that metaphor stuff, you don't even have to pay attention to that. You can overlook that and it's still a great show.
Yeah, I know I did. I had no clue about any of that shit, and in retrospect I was like, fuck me, that's genius.
Yeah, no.
God damn.
Your number 3, Jake.
My number 3, this is where we cross into like, this is like not just anime canon for me. This is just plain fucking canon. This is some of my favorite shit in the whole
Yeah,
world.
this is kind of the same threshold for me.
You know, top 3 immaculate, but the bottom of my top 3, which, you know, I know it's in my top 3, but it's still weird. It feels strange putting something this good at the bottom of anything, is Naoki Urasawa's Monster, which is, I mean, it's perfect. It's basically everything I ever wanted about the really heavy, high stakes drama anime that's like psychological thrillers, but it's like a lot of them tend to go off the rails at some point, whereas Monster is this really grounded story. Like it's one of the few things that I would have not minded got a live action adaptation because of how grounded it is. Essentially, like the animation is pretty good, even though it's like it doesn't have a huge budget, but it's like there's a realism there that sort of makes it not need a lot of the flashier aspects of it. But it's such a gripping story with a great premise that's like a really successful surgeon. One day, there's like this family that gets in to the hospital that have been like brutalized, and most of them are dead. And one of the little boys, he performs this life-saving brain surgery on him. And what happens is that kid turns out to be a fucking psychopath and gets older and becomes a serial murderer and comes back to him. And the whole show, all 70 some episodes of it, are the elaborate cat and mouse games between the villain and the hero, which I think are respectively two of the best antagonist protagonists in storytelling. I think Tenma is a premier fictional character, just an amazingly written protagonist. And then you have Johan, who is basically the best anime villain fucking ever. And it has so many good arcs of the story. It's very long, it's very dialogue driven, but it's 7 if it was a 74 episode show, and it's fucking brilliant. All the characters are great. It's so fucking good. Also read the manga. I'd even say that the manga, for as much as I love the anime, is even better. So
yeah, so brief comments. I haven't seen it because
it's 70 episodes long.
Yeah, 70 something episodes long. So
on Letterboxd it says 1,800 minutes.
Yeah.
Ooh, Nelly.
Ooh, Nelly. So yeah, that's something I'll have to get to sometime soon.
Mm-hmm.
My number 3, bit of a canonical classic. All right, so moving on. Here is our number 2, interestingly enough.
We share it on the same spot.
So that being, and say it with me, 3, 2, 1.
Hunter.
Woo. Yeah.
Yeah, this is I think getting August into the show was the real impetus for all of this, just because I finally had somebody to talk about this show, because obviously the biggest obstacle in overcoming Hunter x Hunter is like just the fact that it's really fucking long.
Yeah, it's like 2 episodes shy of 150 episodes.
And yet it is so good that I binged that shit in the span of a month, and it was the paradigm shift for me that was like, it made me fall in love with fiction again in a way that only one other thing in my life has, which is my number 1. But Hunter x Hunter is just I would say it's the epitome of storytelling in both respective medias, because it basically takes advantage of everything it has, from the point of like the arc structure, the formats, like just everything it's playing with too, is like, you don't have to know a lot about anime to enjoy Hunter x Hunter, but if you do, you're probably going to enjoy it a lot more, because you're going to understand what Togashi is subverting, what he's changing, what these characters mean in the context of the greater artistic world. But the thing about it that's great is really just the fact that the characters are fantastic.
Yeah.
And the show just puts it in these different arcs where they're like, every single arc is a new show. It's like the first one is like a battle anime. It's sort of the introduction.
Yeah.
The second one is like a tournament arc. The third one is a fucking crime epic.
Yes, this mafia story. And like that's just the start.
Yeah, I think that we can both say that, like, while we both love and appreciate the whole show, the thing that makes this what it is for us is the Chimera Ant arc.
Chimera Ant arc,
which is, it's the best thing I've watched in the last 15 years.
Yeah. I mean, separate from the show, it would be a masterpiece, but with the show, it ascends to an even higher height because of just the attachment you have to these characters and just everything it does. It's one of the few things I can say that has made me just bawl.
Yeah, I mean it's powerful, and also it's like for an 150 episode show, that show is directed and animated near flawlessly. Like there's no sense of like you can't tell that there's like a budget or anything on that damn show.
Mean, if you buy the Blu-rays, it just smooths over everything because they just have the money and time to go back and fix every little minutia.
So and it just does things that are in other shonen stories. Like there's a 10 to 12 episode sequence in the Chimera Ant arc that covers a span of 2.5 minutes, and you see it unfold like Rashomon style, where all the perspectives are shown in slow motion, and it's the most captivating, weird, experimental shit, and it's got all these lofty themes, but like, it's fucking great.
And yeah, and in that same section, you've got the narrator just going through everyone's thought processes.
The narrator has more lines in the Chimera Ant arc than any character.
Yeah, and it's like, so this character turned the corner for this reason because they saw this person going this way.
And the whole time you're like, ah!
And it's the best thing.
Oh, it's like also hideously dark. Like it is a mean-spirited show. It doesn't let you know out the gate, but once you get to Yorknew, you're like, this is I
wouldn't
fucked.
Even say Yorknew. I'd say just the end, like those last 3-4 episodes of the first arc is when you realize like, whoa, this is not this
ancient daddy's shonen.
Yeah, this isn't Goku getting powered up in 5 seconds from the Galaxian crystal.
I think we both enjoy very traditional shonen action anime to varying degrees, but that's one where we meet on just this is the peak of this medium.
Yeah,
nothing will ever be this good.
Nope. And
so
that being said, our number ones.
Yeah, somehow fucking unbelievably. These are also stupidly on brand of us. If you have seen these or know us, it's not surprised. I have a poster hanging on my wall of my number one, and that would be
a signed DVD just a couple feet from me,
which I'm fucking infinitely jealous of. And I own all 27 volumes of this. I own every single season on Blu-ray. It is, of course, the peerless Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, which is just like I frequently cite it as my favorite work of fiction ever. And like, even for as much as I love Hunter x Hunter, it's just not close because it was such an integral part of my childhood and growing up and like understanding what anime could do that I wasn't getting. Like I was a kid who grew up watching fucking PBS and the Disney Channel. And then I got YouTube and fucking discovered Fullmetal Alchemist and was just like, this is game changing. And it's like, again, it's also like the highest rated fucking thing ever. You've probably seen it. You probably know what I'm fucking talking about. It's just one of the best fantasy epics ever. I love all of the characters. I love the world. My heart is at peace when I watch Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it through like 1.5 times at this point. It's just something where the whole show you spend just building and building up to the final part of it, which I just think is the last arc of Fullmetal Alchemist. I remember distinctly being sick from school one day and just watching that whole thing in one day, all 13 episodes. It's just impossible to put down.
Like everything that happens after the Promise Day, like not like the show's a waste of time beforehand or anything, but like everything in post the Promise Day in Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is literally the most I have ever enjoyed anything ever.
No, it's an amazing show. I may not hold it like to the same regard as you, but I still think like it's an undeniable classic. It's worth your time. go.
Yeah,
watch
and
it.
I would say that the manga is stronger just because it does stumble a bit in those first parts of like
Yeah,
it
which
has to deal with the fact that 2003 came out before it and everybody knew it.
I've given you my laundry list of complaints about
Yeah.
that.
And to be honest, I share some of them. It's just easier to like once you read the manga, any problems that the show has at the beginning just sort of evaporate from your mind, but that still doesn't change the fact that it's like the first and not to say that it's a waste of time because there's like plenty of some of the best episodes in the show in that first
No,
season.
yeah,
But
exactly.
like just the way it's paced and the way some things are structured are not integral to understanding it. Like once the show gets to the episode Beasts of Dublith, then on it is the greatest show ever made. But still, be patient with it. It will reward you.
All
or
right.
just read the manga.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and August.
my number one. So I've gone from the longest show on my list to my favorite, which is the shortest, that being Fooly Cooly. This is the best coming of age thing ever, in my opinion. It's like a beautifully tonally rich, thematically rich show that is just full of some of the best writing of characters ever. It's just a show that leaves me in tears every time I finish it because the main character to me is like the best protagonist in all of anime because he's just Naota's just such a consistently well written, performed character. It's a show where now look, I am a sub purist and I find the sub unwatchable. The dub is amazing here. Yeah, so
one of the best.
No, one of the best, absolutely. It's just a rock solid show. The music by the Pillows, also some of the best, like one of the best soundtracks ever, up there with like Cowboy Bebop.
100%.
But yeah, it's just a show where to describe the profound impact it's had on me, I feel I would need literal hours.
Yeah, it's something that we plan on, like, that's one of the things I think we should talk about on the show. Like, we've already alluded to some of the things we might be getting to, especially with Ava and a recent announcement of a certain film coming out.
Oh, that actually premiered today.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so Ava actually ended the day we're recording this.
End of Ava. But yeah, like,
For real this time.
It's a show that I haven't seen in a while, but I remember the first time I saw anything about it was when it aired on Adult Swim, which is how I discovered anime in general. Like I had watched, I actually think that was the night I first saw an episode of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, which had an enormous fucking spoiler in it because it was like episode 29. But then after that, I know
which episode you would have.
Oh yeah, it's where you find out the thing, and you're just like,
that's so funny. Oh my god!
Like it didn't even like register to me because I was just like, this show is like so fucking cool and violent. I love it.
That's funny.
But really right funny. After that, I think that they were airing Fooly Cooly on there. And Fooly Cooly, like, just as a piece of art, is one of the most maximalist things I've ever seen. It basically takes advantage of the medium of anime in, like, the most utilitarian way possible. Like, it is only possible to make that in anime, and for it to be made by the people that it was made by. If it was made by anybody else, it simply just wouldn't be as good.
I mean, maximal, you say. What is this August guy? A progressive rock fan or something?
Yeah, me too. It's like, oh, we like really, really technical things?
What could we... It says with a Rush poster behind him.
Yeah, with a Rush poster, and I just listened to moving pictures, and I have a Death vinyl over here. Yeah, okay, progressive music.
But yeah.
So... that will give you an idea as to the things that we value, the things that we like, the things that we are bringing to the table when we appreciate things, which means we are going to move on to the episode proper, where we are going to be talking about a new film and an old film from the same studio.
Same lineage, actually.
And the same lineage. There's truly a lot to unpack here with these two movies. And like, I think I could say as much about these two movies in comparison to one another as I could say about like a 50 episode show, just because of how fascinating the arc is. But I won't bury the lead anymore. It is we are going to be talking about two films, one of which is the new latest output from Studio Ghibli movie called Earwig and the Witch, which is directed by Goro Miyazaki, who is the son of Hayao Miyazaki. And you don't need me to tell you who he is, but the other movie we are going to be discussing is the movie that it most directly parallels, which is KIKI'S Delivery Service, also known as my second favorite movie ever made.
Yeah, so
and
you're
so
you're
we are
having a
going
good
to,
day for discussing favorite anime things.
I won't lie, it makes me a little giddy. Then I remembered that half of what we're about to cover doesn't make me so giddy. That said, we are going to talk about KIKI'S Delivery Service first, because this is sort of the blueprint, the schematic for all other things of its particular kind. If you haven't seen Kiki, please go and do that if you haven't
this
already.
will be a spoiler discussion.
Yeah,
for sure. And
I hated that part where Kiki turns into a zombie.
Yeah, no, and that is a key distinction here. These though, if the gems and tea like one review isn't your thing, maybe this will be, because this will be more of a free form discussion.
Yes, it's just a conversation, which we have talked about extensively just to cover our ground. But KIKI'S Delivery Service is the 1989 film by Hayao Miyazaki, and it's God, what is it, like the 6th movie he made?
Something
like that. He was pretty far into his career. He was coming off the heels of stuff like not Princess Mononoke, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, things like Lupin, Castle of Cagliostro, all that kind of stuff. Basically, this is in the middle of his golden
directly
age.
off the heels, actually, of My Neighbor Totoro, just
Yes.
a year before that.
And I recently have been going through watching like every Studio Ghibli movie with a friend of mine. So I've been trying to like build my rapport of this, because I think it's essentially watching Earwig made me do this. But basically now we just get to ramble about KIKI'S Delivery Service, which is an interesting movie to talk about because it's so laid back. It's such a comfortable movie.
Yeah.
It's a movie that is going for I won't say that it's like purely a vibe, because as a friend of the podcast, Zach and I discussed while watching KIKI'S Delivery Service that the script in Kiki is like one of the most economical pieces of storytelling ever, because it's so good at convincing you that it really doesn't have a structure, even though it does. But it's just sort of this free-forming narrative, coming of age story about a young witch who leaves her home for the first time, and like in this world, in this culture, which is depart from home and find a place to live in, a town that doesn't already have a witch. And they're entrepreneurs, is that witches have to sort of find what they do best and like contribute to the community in some way. And this is her coming of age story.
Yeah.
And August, this was the first time you had seen Kiki. We watched it together
when we watched this together. And yeah, I mean, the metaphor that this is conveying is it's not like it's obscure. It's obviously like going into adulthood, young adulthood, college work, however you want to construe it. It's finding your purpose in the world as a very basic thing. And being that I'm of the age where that's becoming an increasing concern in my life, it hit very close to home as a first watch.
Yeah, and it's weird too, because again, like the stakes in Kiki are very limited. They're very much just about the characters up until like the very end, where we have the sort of the moment where everything sort of culminates in her, like everything in that like section. There's no dialogue from her, but she completely fulfills her character arc in the movie in it, which I think is just positively brilliant. But still, it's a movie that just sort of exists to witness a window of time, I think. And as a result, it's funny that when I first saw this, I was in fact August's age, and I really liked it. It was one of those movies where it's like, I feel like when I come back to this maybe a little later, I will like it more. And that's exactly what happened to me. Just because I feel like I got older, life experience, yada, yada, yada. But like, it's just a movie that very much appeals to those who feel lost in their childhood, like on the verge of adulthood. And it does it in a really emotionally resonant way, I think. I think it's one of the best looking movies of the 80s. I know a movie that came out in 1989 is kind of pushing it. But like Miyazaki in the 80s was fucking hitting home run after home run. And the fact that he came off the heels of, like, he did stuff like My Neighbor Totoro, which is very, very laid back.
Like, yeah, to me, this almost seems like a refinement of what
Mhm.
Totoro was going for, where Totoro's, I mean, that's a movie obviously aging at an age bracket a bit younger than
Mhm.
this. I think he manages to make a lot of the same themes in Totoro, the just being lost within youth. I feel he manages to make that a lot more universal by scaling up the age of the character.
I agree. I think that's a really smart thing to do, just because, like, I actually one of the movies I watched very recently was in fact My Neighbor Totoro after not seeing it for a while. And I guess the thing is with that movie is that I think that's a fantastic fucking movie. Like, it's great. That said, watching it after Kiki is a little bit difficult because the movies function in a very similar way. Obviously, they do a lot of different things. There's a lot more, ironically enough, there's more magical realism in Totoro than there is
Yeah.
in Kiki's, which is strange. But, like,
No, a little, yeah.
the characters in Kiki are really what nail it for me. Like the side characters just sort of wandering in and through their lives, like, you know, the bakers that she lives with, the old ladies that she visits and does the delivery for. You've got the lady who
The
has the
lady
little
in the
cat.
yeah, and out in the woods, and you
Yeah,
also
and
got
they're
that kind of richer family who only have like one scene, but they're really easy to get. And yeah,
Mhm.
I think you make a great point there, because Totoro doesn't have that same focus on those characters, on that,
Mhm.
because it's like it's a lot more in the countryside. Kiki is more urban,
Mhm.
so you don't naturally have that same disposable cast of characters, where in
Yeah.
Kiki you have that, you can just do anyone. But in Totoro it's very restricted to the type of person, the type of personalities, where in a it's very like you have to follow a certain mold being in the countryside, I
Mhm.
think.
No, I think that's a great point. It's also worth mentioning that it's like Kiki is a, like, it's not an outlier when it comes to Miyazaki, but like in terms of like Ghibli movies, when people think about them, they imagine, at least in my opinion, the two most popular ones, which is Spirited Away and
Yeah,
Mononoke,
exactly. They
which,
it's high fantasy, high like spiritual stuff.
yeah, really high concept, whereas Kiki plays things really close to the chest. It's really, really grounded, and it doesn't have like Mononoke is a movie where things just like, you are just constantly being introduced to new things, like the vehicle of Ashitaka just taking you from environment to environment, from character to character. You're just learning about this expansive world, whereas the movie in Kiki, it just sort of revolves around her and basically her immediacy, which is, like, again, might not be for everyone, but I think it's a testament to the fact that the movie is made as well as it is, um, that a lot of people still really, really like it. Because if this was a movie that came out in, like, if it was a live action movie and it was made by like A24, I have a feeling that would be the kind of movie people would be like, this is fucking boring.
I feel it would get very much like the reaction Waves got. I mean,
Kind of.
I mean, look, that's obviously an unfair, that's obviously a very polarizing comparison, but the point is more that Waves is a film where you're either on the side of this is boring, dumb bullshit, or I
Mhm.
love this is perfect.
Yeah, it's about the response and less the work in question. But I
Yeah,
think
no,
you're 100%
exactly.
right.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's that, like, it's just, it's also just like delightful. It's obviously a great looking movie, so it's always pleasant to look at. It's got a score by the GOAT Joe Hisaishi, which I talked about on the podcast last
Yeah.
week, as a dude who composed all of this. And fucking interesting fact that I just did by looking through, I watched Castle in the Sky today, again, because that's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah,
And I
it's
looked
great.
at like all of the like production credits, because in anime it's a little weird that you don't like focus that much. It's just like, oh yeah, the director's Miyazaki, but like, what about everybody else? And then I took a look at the editor, and the editor goes by the name of Takeshi Siyama,
All right.
who not only edited every single Hayao Miyazaki Ghibli movie and the Takahata ones as well, also edited fucking Akira and every
Damn.
single fucking Satoshi Kon movie.
So
Which,
we're talking and I mean, Brief Divergence. Those are very well edited, presented films. So it's
like
obviously repertoire.
fucking this dude, Thelma Shoemaker, everyone else. Like nobody has a catalog that's that impressive. But I think what makes Kiki special is like you have this cabal of talent of people who made a movie as big as Nausicaa, The Valley of the Wind, or as big as Castle in the Sky.
Yeah,
and they get to
that's a good
focus their huge macro talent on something a lot more contained and patently emotional that just has a narrower scope. And, you know, there's a maturity to it. And I find it quite beautiful. I think it's just like, I also think the dub is pretty exceptional. I think Kirsten Dunst does a great job. I think the dub and the sub for both of them is pretty damn good. A lot of the Ghibli movies are pretty good about that because the localization was on point. But I love the performance of Phil Hartman as Gigi, who is just this sassy, sarcastic asshole cat.
Also passed away like before the film was made.
Which fucking damn, god damn,
and
that's a story and a half.
Tragic story and a half, yeah.
Yeah, but also I thought about this. It's so strange because Kirsten Dunst voices Kiki, and it's weird because Kirsten Dunst is in a movie. She's in the Spider-Man films, and Kiki's Delivery Service and Spider-Man 2 both have the exact same plot point where midway through their powers start working because they get depressed. It's just like interesting convalescence.
That's hilarious. No,
but like that little moment of like where Kiki gets super depressed is just like it packs so much punch, even though it's just like little girl is sad in her room. And it's like, I feel so bad for her still. It's like a fucking, like, I feel like I'm watching Magnolia when she says that she can't use her powers anymore.
And to comment on the vocal performances, and I guess this is also on directing, this is a film where if you so desire, you can shut the sound off completely. You'll follow this perfectly.
Yes.
It's like character designs are so good because they convey exactly who the character is, what they're thinking at any given moment. And of course, it's aided by just how expressive the animation is, as you've made a good point of already. So if you just wanted to shut the sound off, put on your lo-fi post-rock music,
lo-fi beats to study to. I actually watched what was that movie? I think is it Whisper of the Heart? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's the one.
Which that's the one where the lo-fi beats girl comes from. Like we were just watching it, and then all of a sudden she was like sitting at a desk writing with headphones on, and Zach was just funny. Like, "Oh my god, it's the lo-fi beats girl."
That's hilarious.
Which it's funny. I would say the best direct analog to this movie is if you enjoy Greta Gerwig's Little Women. This is going to be like your favorite fucking movie ever. Which. Greta Gerwig's Little Women, top 10 of all time.
How did this happen?
Precarious.
Jake?
But yeah, it's a very laid back movie, and if that's not what you're in for, like if you're expecting a Mononoke or a Nausicaa or even something like The Wind Rises, which I think is way more expansive on like imagination level, it's something that's like it is in and of itself perfect. Just tiny little contained cinematic moment. And yeah, I think that it's something that you can show to anybody. I got lucky enough to see that movie in theaters with Morgan, and it was fucking outstanding. It's such a great film.
No, and I guess if I had any criticism of this film, which I do have a bit of, not much, I personally, and it's kind of 2 points, both relating to the very end of this. First, and this is like, just if you know my taste in film, this shouldn't be surprising, but I'm not crazy about like having the big, she's gotta save her friend on the crashing Zeppelin thing.
Yep.
It's just, I think the escalation the shift in tone there, it doesn't work for me. I think it gets a little too over dramatic and sappy in that moment, a little too quickly. Tone just goes from like 4 to 700, which is an anime thing, yeah. But I think there are just movies that can handle that kind of tone shift a lot better. than not.
That was a complaint that I think I had when I first watched it, because I gave this the same score you did when I first saw it, and I was just kind of like, the whole movie's this like slightly more meditative, comfy movie, and then it's just like it's got this sharp incline, and call it Stockholm syndrome, but at this point, I think the reason that works for me is because of how much of a whiplash it is. It just makes the emotions that were always there in the rest of the movie feel as big as they possibly can, and it's like that's just something you either do like or you don't.
Yeah, and I think that's just always been something I've valued, just staying relatively consistent with what you're doing and not having these big dumb action moments. That's just it's not ever been my thing. I'm not an action movie fan, I guess is the way to put it.
I think you've seen Spirited Away, right?
Yeah, I have.
I actually think, like, again, Kiki, obviously, second favorite movie ever made. I think it's perfect. I love everything about it. But, Spirited Away, also kind of a perfect movie that I love a lot. In exactly what you're talking about, I think Spirited Away does that Kiki thing in a way that's a little bit more elegant, because that like ending of her and the dragon thing, like that's very similar energy, but Spirited Away, like it's got this perfect escalation where things are just like firing on all cylinders visually the whole time. So when you get to something that jarring, it's really not that like it's not like whiplash inducing. It's like it's a logical progression.
Like, I mean, you've got the first scene in the bathhouse where they're cleaning the giant mud spirit. And for me, it's like moments like that which build up to that and make it so good. And that being said, that's and also like you've got the setup in that film for that kind of thing with the character himself. I forget his name, Haku, I think.
Haku, that sounds right.
Yeah, you get the setup with that character. And for the reference, same rating from me for both of these films. So it's not like this is something that breaks the movie for me.
Yeah, nah.
Other thing, but, and this is a complaint that English dub only, interestingly enough. And this is actually something I think. Have you seen the Japanese dub of this? Because
I have. That was the first version of it I watched.
Okay, cool. So you'll be familiar with this potentially, that Gigi in the Japanese dub never speaks to Kiki again after he stops talking to her.
That's right. I had forgotten about that.
And I think that has a much more powerful impact than him talking to her at the end of the English dub again.
Yeah, I like both because it's like one is cathartic, but also one is very mean. It's basically like if you have a long form story, it's exactly analogous to you can either you have a character that like dies and you can go for the emotional catharsis of bringing them back somehow, or you can go with the more mature route of having the characters in your story accept the fact that they're gone, which depends on a case-by-case basis, but if you ask me which version of that I prefer, I would say that I would prefer the original Japanese dub in that case.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's also not something that's something that just doesn't affect my score at all. I just think it's an interesting discussion point as to which
totally
you prefer. I like it because I think it really drives home the metaphor they're going for, like how she's matured past the point where she no longer needs Gigi, who's essentially like a projection of her internal monologue, or like talking to herself onto like this physical being, this cat. So I think kind of that symbolism for me resonates more than
I like that
getting
too.
this back.
But that's kind of our thoughts on Kiki, which is, it's a simple movie, but that also means that like by its own virtue, it's a movie that's also, if one were to make a movie of its kind, or just make a story, regardless of the medium, you look at Kiki, basically, if you do all the things that Kiki does in a slightly different way, you're fucking golden. And a lot of Ghibli movies kind of do that. Like Whisper of the Heart is kind of similar in that regard.
I think the big one is Howl's Moving Castle.
Howl's Moving Castle, and also, oh goodness, it's not. Oh God, what is that movie?
Good descriptions.
I'm gonna have to let me look at the fucking listing of Miyazaki here, just because motherfucker's got too many goddamn movies. There's The Secret World of Arietti. that's another movie that's like kind of a mid lower tier Ghibli movie, but it's also like it's trying to go for the same thing that Kiki did and just doesn't quite like hit that level, which it's hard to compare things to other things that are so big like that. But Miyazaki has a lot of different like tropes and signifiers that he's fascinated with. One of the ones I joke about with everyone all the time is that motherfucker loves laundry and chores. Like whenever somebody does something in a movie, you could bet your ass that someone will eventually, like in Castle of the Sky, it's like they're on an airship, fuck it, they're doing laundry. He loves
also,
chores.
Another signifier of Miyazaki, nature. Man loves nature, the natural world, the conservation and protecting of it.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, Castle in the Sky, Princess Mononoke, hell, even like Totoro.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. There's that whole tree thing. That whole scene is very much that.
Yeah.
In fact, Kiki might be the movie that departs more from that. It's mostly about an environment in general and not like nature.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, actually. I never really thought about that.
No, yeah. I was kind of thinking that it's kind of the movie of his that's because it's so centered on like a city and city life. It strays further away from that nature element.
Yeah, I think the Howl's Moving Castle of the movies that are like most similar to it, of like Howl's Moving Castle is also, similar to Spirited Away. It's like you have girl goes to place, girl does labor, magic fantasy shenanigans ensue. But Howl's Moving Castle for me is cool because that movie is fucking chaotic. There's just so much happening in it, and it doesn't really explain anything. So in that respect, I think that copying it is maybe the best example because it did its own thing, whereas stuff like Arietti just kind of lives in its shadow.
And something else, another particular...
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking of living in Kiki and Hayao Miyazaki's shadow, I guess if we had to, I'm going to throw a 10 onto Kiki if we're going to keep track of scores.
I would give it an 8.
So yeah, big recommendation from the both of us. Now we have to pivot to Earwig and the Witch, which is directed by Goro Miyazaki. Goro Miyazaki, as I mentioned earlier, is Hayao Miyazaki's son. And let me tell you, watching all of their movies in conjunction is a fascinating experience because it is really obvious that Goro is not as good as his dad. And I don't mean that in a way that's like, you can compare anybody to Miyazaki in their
That's not like on the base level, like just saying so and so isn't as good as Hayao Miyazaki. Like on the base level, that's not an insult or like even derogatory. But in this context,
I can't say maybe
half
of my favorite directors are better than Miyazaki. I mean, that's just it's the standard,
Yeah, exactly. Like.
So, that's not inherently a problem. Like Isao Takahata, very like the second most important guy when it comes to Ghibli. Not as good as Miyazaki. Still has cranked out masterpieces.
Kazuhiro Otomo. Not as good as Miyazaki, but undeniable number of canon classic films.
And being the progeny of that man, it would, you wouldn't think that there's not the possibility of some of that talent maybe transferring over. Maybe that was like an inspiration for him. But the thing is about Goro Miyazaki being not as good as his dad is that it's like, it is a steep valley. And you can almost see that Hayao kind of likes it that way because the projects that Goro has taken on, he's only done
he's done 3 movies.
Yeah, he's done this. He's done From Up on Poppy Hill, and he's done Tales from Earthsea. And your best movie there, by a mile, is From Up on Poppy Hill, and that's just kind of an okay movie. It's fine. I mean, again, it's what we were talking about. It's Kiki Light.
Oh yeah, no, I figured that's why you brought it up to kind of yeah, exactly.
And Tales from Earthsea is an adaptation of one of my favorite authors, Ursula K. Le Guin. It's an adaptation of a book from that universe, which you have a lot to work with there already. But That's Goro trying to make his Princess Mononoke. That's Goro trying to make his Spirited Away. And Tales from Earthsea is fucking boring. Like, I know that some people might not get along with Kiki or slower paced movies like that, but in Tales from Earthsea, it's like there's no character building. The plot never decides on what it's doing. It is a weirdly dark movie. It's got like child slavery, sexual assault is applied at points, and just the whole climax is a mess. Like, it's a disaster. And yet, the gap in quality between Earthsea and Earwig is a valley. It's insane.
And I'm going to presume Earthsea also doesn't have the baggage of being the most psychologically disturbing film since Silence of the Lambs.
It is an insanely dark movie, and it doesn't touch on that.
It doesn't know it's a dark movie,
no.
but it is something where I am desperate. I am so uncomfortable and disturbed the whole time.
Just to like provide a context here, it's basically very widely known knowledge that Hayao Miyazaki is kind of a terrible dad.
Yeah.
And like, that's not even conjecture. He said that. He's just like, I was not a very good parent to Goro. I was cranking out masterpieces in the 80s, and that was where all of my time went. I didn't parent him. He like looked up to me, and I just didn't do anything. And the funny thing is, if you look back into all of Miyazaki's movies, you can see a kernel of like self-flagellation because of that, of like father figures being these absent people. Like, I watched Porco Rosso last night, which is often thought to be his weakest film, which I would say that award goes to Ponyo, but I like Porco Rosso a lot. But it's a movie where the main character is just sort of like this roguish, piratey dude, and he's got like a strained relationship with the people around him, and it's just like he's this very abrasive person, and this person who cares a lot for what they do, has this like huge amount of passion. Then there's Spirited Away, where the two parents immediately get turned into pigs, and it's just like, oh geez, wow.
And I'd say his best father character is the guy in Totoro, who is also, that's like the best father in any Ghibli film you could ask for. And he's also absent most of the time because
he's caring for their mom, but he can't do everything.
And he's doing his job, he's doing his work. So
yeah, and he clearly like cares about it, and he spends time away from them. And so it's very important to realize this is a thing, and they are both, at least Hayao is aware of that. And this hasn't manifested into his movies thus far until we get to Earwig and the Witch, which is a movie that's okay. Like,
how does one go about this?
Like, what exactly is the movie's premise? Because I don't ever think it really gets to having one. It's just always in the process of threatening to start, and then it's over.
That's the biggest. Like, right off the bat, that is this movie's biggest problem, that it has the first act of a movie. It introduces the characters. It introduces the character's central conflict, and then it's over.
Yeah, it's not a particularly long film, despite feeling like it's 1,000 hours long. It starts off basically with the plot of the new Netflix show, The Queen's Gambit, where somebody leaves an orphan at an orphanage, and it's the mother character of our main character who then leaves, and like kind of keeps showing up in flashbacks throughout the movie, and you don't really ever know what her deal is until the very end, which that's going to be a lot to unpack. And she gets left there, and she becomes like a misanthrope. Like, she's not like a child. Like, Miyazaki's protagonists are always these incredibly motivated, hyper competent people, like Nausicaa and Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. When shit goes down, she's just like, you go over here, you do this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna fight, blah, 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 blah. Like,
I'd say going. Motivated is a good word for it, or alternatively, because I think of like Spirited Away, I think like just characters who and motivated I don't think quite fits there, but I think it's either motivated or they're like exceptionally driven. They're not driven, like people who just can, they set their mind to something, and it's like, if I gotta
making
do
the
this,
best of a bad situation.
That's that's even better than what I was
Howl's
trying
Moving
to say.
Castle and Spirited Away very much shared DNA like that of like,
Yeah,
girl
exactly.
being in place has to break curse thing. And that's what they're all about. Whereas it's just like, and they're all kind of like, they're all very, they're very well defined characters, but they're also just people who you can tell are like, they're maybe a bit more hardened than most people. Like Nausicaa straight up fucking tries to kill a guy once her dad dies. And Chihiro is like, she's kind of a brat in the beginning, but she's like likable and endearing as a child. Whereas Earwig, like this chick, what is her fucking problem? She's just like, I don't even want to be adopted. You're just like,
she's just completely like incongruous to everything. She just doesn't fit with any of the other protagonists.
Or in her own movie.
Or in her own movie. She feels like she feels like what a Western like what a Hollywood executive is like. The kids are like the animes. This is what the protagonist is like, eh?
And this feels like a Western studio trying to do an anime, which is again
hilarious.
But the thing with her too is that like once you start to read into the whole narrative the film has, that's not like the narrative in the movie, but the narrative of the film's creation, is that Earwig is a character. Is her name even Earwig? Is that the band? No, it's like her name's like Aya. But
her name's Aya.
The main character here is a main character that only makes logical sense if they are a stand-in for Goro Miyazaki. Because it's like somebody who is so unreal, like no 5-year-old in existence is going to be like, I hate the idea of parents because mine gave up on me. And it's just like, I don't know about that one.
Like that, and that's the thing. If you're 5, you're not really like, you don't have enough experience. You're not old enough to really comprehend that you don't have that level of comprehension that like, oh, I think parenting is stupid for this, and this. You're just like, oh, these 2 people have loved and cared for me my whole life. They must be great.
Yes.
Or it must be great to have people love and care for me.
And this attitude bleeds into her personality to a point. Like she's got like a guy friend at the orphanage that she like sneaks away with at the beginning, and she's a total fucking dick to him, just fucking mean. And I'm like, just because like your other characters, like fucking Princess Mononoke is a fucking character who tries to kill the principal protagonist and pretty much everybody else, and she's like mean and abrasive and like just kind of angry and like she's not a character who's meant to be liked. She's meant to be like taken at face value as a symptom of the greater problem of the narrative. Whereas it's like, you don't need to write someone who's bubbly and nice, and like, you don't need to write Kiki to have a compelling movie. But Earwig is like just this fucking mastermind character of just like, I'm never going to get adopted. I'm going to throw off all of my interviews so that no one picks me.
No,
and it's like,
she's this mastermind of like trying to get everyone to just hate her, and she's also like, for the level of intelligence she has to have, and it's never addressed, like she would have to be like a fucking genius
especially when we get to the like end of the movie where she's just like, not only is she an evil genius, she's an evil genius who starts fucking like emotionally manipulating people.
My gosh, that's right.
We'll get to that, but like the closest this movie has to a premise is she's then adopted by this couple, and this couple is like, their character designs are designed to be ugly, like even if this was animated in 2D and like the original
let's address that briefly.
This is the ugliest fucking movie I've ever seen in my life.
It would be better if they animated it with Play-Doh.
Oh god, I mean like, like there's actually a movie that I saw, I didn't see, I want to watch it just because it looks really awesome. It's called it's like a Spanish movie called La Casa De Lobos, which is this entire movie that's made out of like weird warped claymation, and it's like really ugly, but it's also like, it finds this like middle ground of being like really compelling despite its ugliness. Whereas this looks like actually holy shit, I can't believe I didn't think about this when we were watching it originally. It reminds me of the guy who came up with the anime series and manga Gantz. Before his career started with Gantz, he invested in 3D manga, which is this thing that like, it was basically like he didn't have to have an illustrator and he just used 3D models and printed it digitally. And it was fucking ugly because it was the first kind of 3D digital like imaging thing
it was
that they
like,
had.
Like I'm assuming this is like Transformers Beast Wars type shit.
It looks exactly like that. Or Reboot. It looks precisely like those two things. And this is like uglier. Like it doesn't have like a flair. It's just so it's mainly ugly for the fact that it just looks boring. It's just a bunch of like pastel ugly colors that are muddy, and the environment design is gross and like it's not like interesting to look at. Like the beginning of Howl's Moving Castle, that fucking place is a disaster that's like covered in soot and dust, and we watch the main character clean it all, and it's still visually captivating.
And that being said, this 3D manga looks better than Earwig
from like the
Witch.
fucking 80s. Like it has no right to look better, and it's like I just don't know how anyone, like, I understand that you can get into a place as an artist where you like just sort of get so involved in your work that you can't be self-critical, but I still can't imagine this happening for this because it's just so ugly that someone should have stopped him.
And I on that same token, I mean, I understand that this is like a rejection, a rebuke of Hayao Miyazaki on a certain level, but like, got him, owned the libs by making my movie look like shit.
Yeah, like, again, Up on Poppy Hill, Tales from Earthsea, not the best looking movies in Studio Ghibli's catalog, still good looking. They are nice to look at aesthetically. In fact, fucking Tales from Earthsea has some breathtaking moments in the beginning of it. But like, this just feels like almost a conscious attempt to make the ugly movie as ugly as its like thematic parts, which it doesn't really have until the end. Like basically I joked and was just like, oh man, when Studio Ghibli characters do chores, hooting, hollering, this is dope. Then the movie is nothing but this. Like, she gets adopted by this weird, ugly couple who are like magic people. Like, one of them is like a god, and then the other one's just this witch.
Yeah, and let's make this distinction between Kiki and this real quick. In Kiki, it's like witches are just a thing that exists in the world. And
there's never any exposition about this is when the witches came into the world and now they behave like blah,
Kiki
blah, blah.
doesn't need that exposition because it's just so inherent in the world. You just get it. No dialogue. This you need dialogue because this film has
what even country does it take place in?
This
it has
film
no
has
setting.
I think it's England.
It
maybe
very well could be.
But this film has two locations, this enclosed, stupid, like nursery, which you see for one scene, and then the house. Those are the two locations. You get no sense of the outside world. You have no sense of perspective of what anything is.
And the house is like this magical place that has like a bajillion rooms in it. And there's like an opening montage to show it. And it's like the most boring thing I've ever seen in my life. It's like, oh, there's this huge room that they go into. And it's just like, there's nothing but columns. What? Why? Am I supposed to be impressed?
It looked like a parking garage or something.
It looked like a fucking parking garage in like the fucking city that I live next to. It just looks fuck ugly. And the most of the movie, most of it, takes place in this like laboratory thing. Like I'd say a principal 60 to 65% of it is just in this disgusting room where the entire reason they adopt this girl, at least at first, seems to be that the one like the marriage of these two people is like it's fucking bizarre because they don't talk to each other.
They don't talk to each other, at least not that we see.
And like one of them, like the dude who like he's just like a god with superpowers and just like walks around grumbling all the time, and it's just like, gee, I wonder what you're trying to say here,
I wonder
Goro.
who this is an analog for.
And then there's the witch who's the wife, who's just again designed to be ugly and mean. She's just like blatantly abusive to the kid, and it's just like, I adopted you so you could help me make potions. And congratulations,
Yeah.
60% of the movie is her making potions and cleaning, and it's like,
But and that's the thing. There's no character to ground that in. It's just like, oh, she's making another potion. She's cleaning another fucking bathroom.
and then there's like an ugly cat who's supposed to be like the Gigi of the movie, and it's like
same design, same black
Mhm.
cat, kind of black slender cat who talks
Yeah, I mean,
to the
it has to
girl.
be a callback to it. Like it's just impossible.
There's no way you just
And nothing fucking happens, and you're just like, oh, okay, well, what about the difference between this and something like Kiki? Or like even when other characters do mundane things in movies like this, it's like, yeah, well, the difference is when Howl's Moving Castle does this, it does so in this really briskly edited montage where you see the characters bonding, you see their relationships grow and change. There is a progression. Once the montage begins and once it ends, your characters are all in different places. When this movie does anything, the characters don't grow. The characters don't reveal anything about themselves. It's just the little kid's a little shit, the mom is an ugly bitch, and the dad is irreverent Hayao Miyazaki.
Irreverent Hayao hates everyone. Doesn't
Yeah, he
talk.
just like grumbles and like magic like falls out of his face and shit. It's so weird.
He'll like, and what's weird is what strikes me as exceptionally weird for like just, so she hires this girl to do some like menial tasks. There are a couple times when she asks her to make breakfast for this old guy.
Mm-hmm.
But we also see at the click of his fingers, he can just summon this dumb tornado, which does it perfectly for him. So it's like, what's the point here?
Yeah, like the world building of like the magic and stuff, it's just like, I don't care if magic doesn't make sense because it's fucking magic. What I care about is how you use it. And this movie is just like, you could show me something about it, you could tell me something where it's just like, no, he just snaps his fingers and then some shit happens. It's the most boring way you could possibly explain it. And that's the movie, is that every single tiny thing it does, it finds the most boring way to do it.
It finds like there's this scene, there's this kind of montage that feels like it lasts for 5 hours, where she goes outside, she has to like clip the hedges, but the hedges are alive. Oh no.
Whoa, scary. And it's like the most boring magical world of all time.
No, and that's just the whole thing. And this movie gets to a point where it's so boring, where we kind of started talking about theories, Kiki, and theories of what we thought would happen.
Yeah, and like we were just like, oh, maybe this is gonna happen, and like, oh, maybe she's gonna like. I think the one that's most telling is that we were just like, oh, what's gonna happen? Of course, is she's gonna be like, oh, I can only do so much while cleaning. What if you taught me how to do magic? Because the parent character teaching the child character how to do magic, that's like a direct metaphor or something.
Yeah.
And the thing is that she asks her, but she goes, no, I'm not going to teach you how to do magic. And it's like,
And also, I got into this deep plot theory.
Yes, please.
Which was like, so you have to understand, in this dumb parking garage scene, she finds this like album, and it turns out that like her mom and these two people were in a band. So I had like this crackpot theory that's not even that bad. It's like, this could be a real plot to a movie, where I thought, okay, she's gonna like make a potion to make her travel back in time, and she joins the band and ends up being, and she's like her mom in the scenario or something, or like she meets her mom and has to encourage her mom to like not split up with this band, like make a better life for herself. And what the movie does is nothing. It like nothing.
And, it's great that you point that out, because that, like, first of all, I probably would have forgotten if you didn't mention that, but that's the thing. That's what the movie's named after. The whole, like, Earwig, that's the name of the band. And, like, she finds this vinyl and she plays it, like, twice. And you think
she plays
like
one song on this vinyl
Yeah.
twice.
It keeps showing you this, but she doesn't ever, like, get inspired. She doesn't ever say if she, like, even likes the music.
No,
She just plays it, and then it happens, and it's like this weird 60s psychedelic band album cover, and it's strange. It looks like the fucking font they use on the Shags album.
Yeah.
It's like you think it's going to play a significant role in the narrative or something, because they keep coming back to it, but it's just like
it doesn't pay off. It does not pay off
until, like, the last minute of the film, where it kind of
the last 10 seconds before the credits.
We have to unpack that when we get to it, because first we have to talk about
first we've got to go
act,
through the rest of the film,
which, like, again, nothing happens until maybe the last 15 or so minutes, where,
like, this whole time she's been making this one potion to kind of spite the mom into action.
Yes. And, like, there's also this weird thing it keeps establishing, that, like, you can look through the walls of the house in some ways, and she's, like, using it to spy on them. It's like there's a shot, and it's like straight out of Peeping Tom and Psycho. That's just bizarre. But she's like, and they're trying to establish this weird thing of, like, how he goes through the rules of him going through the walls in his house, so that it can be reincorporated into the climax, even though it doesn't explain it at all.
Yeah, no, it's like the stupidest reincorporation ever, because it just doesn't make sense at all.
And what happens is she basically she gets the mom angry with, like, the potion thing.
Yeah,
and then
she makes this potion that, like, it summons worms or something. And she spends the whole film making this potion, basically.
This incredibly specific potion for this incredibly specific event, where I'm just like, could you have not come up with a better way to do this? Because I really feel like it would just be like, oh, well, I wanted to, like, surprise my girlfriend, so I fucking I faked my own death so that she'd be surprised when she walked into the house. And it's just like, I don't really, I mean, like, you're technically getting what you wanted.
Yeah, I don't know how this quite works out.
And then, like, again, the parent characters, who we know nothing about, nothing about them at all. What happens is she tricks one character, she tricks the dad character into hitting the mom character.
She tricks the dad into beating his wife.
And it's, like, framed as
that's
good.
The catharsis of the film.
Fucking girl boss shit.
Where
it's like, oh yeah, and it's just like, he was just as bad as her, so I don't really know why this is a win for you all. And then the end happens with the whole music thing, and then, like, we get some exposition about the story, about how they were in a band with her mom, and they never make it clear if that's why they adopted her.
No,
like, was this a coincidence? I don't know.
I think from the beginning of the film, I remember they, like, singled her out, and I think that was supposed to be an indication that it was, like,
and is this, like, meaningful in any way?
Fuck if I know. I mean, I think I don't know if they're singling her out because they, like,
you're probably right. It's like, it's just that the movie is so bad at telling its own story.
They sense her magicness or whatever dumb bullshit?
And then, like, they just talk about the story of them being in the band, and, like, they, like, her mom was also with the Goro Miyazaki guy, like, romantically or whatever, and then some fucking contrived thing came out of nowhere that split up the band, and then like, she just went away from them. And then at the end of the movie, she just shows up
with not to mention, her biological mother shows up and has adopted her best friend from the orphanage.
And it's just like, what is this fucking message?
And we should mention the theory that that her mom is supposedly can be construed as Isao Takahata.
Oh, yes, which is even fucking funnier to me because it's just like, I don't know, the fact that just positioning Takahata, who, from what I have seen, could not be more different from Hayao Miyazaki if you tried, as this fucking, like, controlling, abusive fucktard. It's just like, this feels really mean-spirited, my dude.
We're like, we gotta bring down Hayao an extra peg by just owning him. Like, yeah, Isao Takahata's my real dad.
And it's in some ways, I'm almost grateful for it to exist, because at least in terms of movies that exist under the Studio Ghibli umbrella, because this isn't like, Goro doesn't like have his own thing going on. This is a Ghibli movie.
No, it's
this
Ghibli.
Is the worst Ghibli movie by a country mile. Nothing even comes close to being as bad
Aside
as this
from
does.
Other Goro Miyazaki
Yeah, it's
films.
like, again, Tales from Earthsea is a movie I would give like a soft 4 out of 10. I don't care for it at all. And this is like a 1.5, 2. Which,
yeah, it's for me like a 2.
And it's so, like, again, the animation being as bad as it is does not have to be the stumbling block that it is, because it's like, I could, in another universe, get over it if the story is as compelling enough. Because, you know, I've watched fucking old 1990s anime OVAs where the animation sucks shit. Like, I've watched the fucking Alita Battle Angel OVA.
Yeah,
that,
like, I mean,
garbage.
It looks like garbage. Every character looks like a blob, but what's great about that is
good.
The story's good, and also the violence in that is awesome.
Yeah, like, this just has like no appeal to it.
There's
it's
no
a movie...
point of animation where you can get in. There's not like a single memorable moment of animation.
The way I gauge whether or not an animated film is well directed is you ask yourself one question. It's, could this movie have been made in live action? And if yes, how different would it be? And the thing is that most Studio Ghibli movies, I'd be like, I don't think I would trust anyone to make something like Mononoke. I don't really even trust to make something like Kiki, but like, I guess it could feasibly be done. But then there's this, and there's no reason that this couldn't be live action. None at all.
I mean, here's the thing about animation, and specifically what Miyazaki does with it. He has moments where either he's on one of two settings. Either one thing is animated and it looks really, really good, or everything is animated and it looks so. But everything being animated is an impressive enough virtue to carry the scene on its own.
I.e. Ponyo.
I.e. Ponyo, or The Wind Rises is another example that comes to mind.
And like, there is, at least, no matter how well you get along with the narratives, the pacing or whatever, there is an appeal there. Like, if somebody was just like, oh, I don't get why people like Kiki, I would show them a movie like this, because it's just like, this is the difference between a movie that is like laid back but still has very intentional structuring, theming, and plot beats. It's like the difference between something that's like, you know, it's like a Richard Linklater movie where it's just like, it's seemingly structureless, but there is an elliptical nature to the writing, which gives it a progression that is interesting to follow, even if it's not traditional. Whereas this movie is like, it's got the skeleton of a movie like Kiki, and it's got all of the parts. It's just that none of them are arranged in a way that makes sense or is even remotely captivating.
It's all very nonsensical. And a word I find myself coming back to is control, because whenever Miyazaki directs a film, he has an immense amount of control over everything. Every detail feels refined to what he's doing. Here, you could have a computer direct this movie just by feeding 1,000 like films through it, and this would be like the average. This would be like what it would auto-generate as directing, like
yes,
the subject of the scene moves and nothing else happens. There's nothing.
It is like a robot
background.
It's so like, it's definitely like sloppier. It's also like, this is how you can gauge, like, if you want to show film students what directing is, you show them a movie that Miyazaki made, and then you show them this, which is a movie that just sort of shows things happening. It pays no mind to how it's doing them. Like, camera movements, editing, these really, really basic fundamental aspects of storytelling are just not here. it's just medium shot, medium shot, medium shot.
Medium
There's
shot.
no
Like there's never a wide. There's like
Fully
a
Cooley.
tight here or there.
That's a show
Fully Cooley.
that fucking
Holy shit, yeah.
that is a show that is like, it's not always about what it's showing you, it's how it's showing it to you, because it's just like it's so utilitarian and so just like this, we are going to give you this story in the most interesting way possible. Like we are never going to let up. And it's like you don't always have to be that, but on some level you have to be conscious of it. And there's never a moment of like I was watching Castle in the Sky earlier, and there's a moment where like they kidnap the girl at the very beginning of the movie, and she's about to hit the villain over the head where she's about to escape with a glass bottle, and she like lifts it up, and then like it just like it's about to hit his head, and then it match cuts immediately to a gun firing, and it's just like that's maintaining consistency. That's like an edit that's on a beat. That's something that's like you see that and it happens, and you're just like whoa. And I also watched a bunch of Satoshi Kon movies recently. I watched Tokyo Godfathers, which is a movie where at the very end there's this really big thing that happens, and
and there's like the scene on the rooftop, not to spoil anything,
which like takes your breath away because of how it's edited, because you're just like fucking losing your mind, and then eventually it just like there's a cut and you're like
yeah,
and that's just nothing like
a
that
scene
here.
that uses like wide shots really well, and like scope and scale, which this movie has no scope at all.
No, and you can be like domestic or whatever and have like scope. It's like even Kiki, it's just like it's got moments where she's like lying in that meadow and it's like overlooking the ocean, or when she's flying, or when like the Spirit of Freedom is coming. There's opportunities to make like, it has moments where it shows something expansive so that the intimate moments feel more intimate. Whereas this is just one mode the whole way.
No, and I should say there's a difference between domestic and unambitious.
Yes.
This is unambitious.
You are correct. And it's so sad because like, you know, I almost feel like the expectation for Goro was like self-imposed, because Hayao literally has said verbatim, I think Goro should stop making movies. Like he's actually said that. And I think he just feels like he has to live up to his father. And I'm just like, you are pursuing something that I just feel like, is this truly your passion? Which is like, it's a sad thing to ask, but it's just like, would you live a more fulfilling life if you weren't doing this? Because this does not come across as something that you want to be doing. It feels like you're trying to like come across like you feel like you are, but it just feels like a product. And that's not what your dad's shit is about, man.
It feels so, and that's something I forgot to mention during the Kiki discussion, but I'll bring it up now.
Yeah.
Miyazaki's films feel very distinctly middle class, is how I'll say it.
Yeah,
there's a lot of working. It's about like not always having assurance in your day-to-day. There's something very middle class about it, and I suspect Goro doesn't have the same life experience, that same like looking at the world through that way. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
dedication.
Like it's sort of, yeah, you're right. It's like it's a very working class thing, because it's like he's also not about like, he's not like a staunch capitalist or anything. He's not making movies about how, like doing hard work is going to get you money. What he's doing is just like doing hard work for the benefit of everyone will fulfill your life, basically. It's just like you have the characters in Princess Mononoke who like Lady Eboshi gets all of these women who work at brothels and who are homeless and poor and gives them a job, and that job basically benefits everybody. There's a very, very distinct ecosystem and economy for what labor is. And like when in Castle in the Sky, when they get on the pirate ship, they are immediately like, let's put you to work so that you can earn your keep.
Yeah,
and it's like,
exactly.
It's a very subtle thing that he does. And Goro just doesn't have it in him to ride that subtlety.
No,
it's just not there.
I almost wonder if it's like a life experience thing, because I mean, I think Goro was obviously raised at a point where Miyazaki was already very well off.
Yeah.
So it's almost a thing where I have to question, is he the kind of person who has never worked a day in retail or like a McDonald's or whatever equivalent of that?
And he doesn't have his father's trademark like sense of perfectionism. Like I just can't imagine somebody sitting back after making this and just being like self-critical or whatever, just because it's just like, what is there to really be self-critical about when this is so much of a flat line? Like,
No, like
you just feel like you didn't care, man.
what are you overcorrecting here? It's like every scene looks flat, looks like washed out pastels.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like you don't have to like if the directing and editing in this were good, it would be salvageable because I mean, again, we mentioned stuff like Reboot and Transformers, which are shows that don't look good, but it's just like they're also shows that are like largely edited and like directed pretty well
Yeah,
because
no,
they like
those are
have
all
cinematic language.
yeah, there's shows also that have a lot of like strong characterization
Mm-hmm.
and like likable characters, which a character being likable, not at all essential for making a
No,
movie. But when you're spending the whole time with the character and you have to constantly watch them do chores and they're constantly complaining and trying
mm-hmm.
to one up someone else, it's obnoxious. It's not endearing like
No.
how Chizuru initially is in Spirited Away.
Yeah, it's because you identify with Chizuru because it's just like, yeah, man, fucking being made the work at first fucking sucks. Everybody knows that feeling.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to be here. This wasn't my decision. And there's no universality to the whole thing. And you know, it's just sad because I feel like it's a blight on an otherwise like again, I don't think that I'm far from believing Studio Ghibli is like infallible or anything, but that initial run of 80s and 90s movies is pretty fucking untouchable, and even continuing on into the 2000s a little bit. There are other directors other than Miyazaki who made really, really good movies. And the fact that Goro is so much of a step down from even lesser Ghibli stuff is just like, you should not be leading the charge now that Hayao stepped down. It shouldn't be you.
Stepped down, air quotes, after
Yeah,
retiring for the
he
seventh
still
time.
has a movie in production right now. Like, will we see it ever? I don't know. The Wind Rises wasn't supposed to happen, but it did.
I mean, Princess Mononoke was supposed to be the last one.
Fucking yeah, exactly. This time it'll be different.
Yeah.
But you know, it makes me worry for the future of Studio Ghibli. But like, I don't know, man. There's a lot of people who are doing a lot of cool things in animation right now who aren't necessarily a part of that. You got people like Masaaki Yuasa, who's being able to crank out movies more than he ever was able to and work on TV shows. You got people like Makoto Shinkai who are having enormous success in a Western audience. Like, we've got other people who are around doing interesting shit, but Ghibli is still Ghibli. You want that to do well.
No, I mean, just the name, the legacy is enough to make you invested, I think.
Yeah. And you know, that's just I'm kind of yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about it, frankly, just because you know, like, not that there isn't a lot to talk about. I think we definitely went in depth here, but it's still like the problem of the movie is that it's surface level. There's no greater meaning. It's nothing.
No, the greater meaning is that Goro hates Hayao.
Yeah, the greater meaning is fuck my dad, which, you know, dude, if you want to make a movie about that, fine. I get it. But also, I watched Ponyo yesterday, which is far from a movie I'm in love with. But that movie has like the like Ponyo's dad, who is like this fucking Neptune Poseidon looking motherfucker, who's just like this person who's tried to control their children and can't, and he's just like incompetent and looking all over the place, and like it's very much, I'm just like, Hayao Miyazaki thinks he's a terrible dad. This is just what this movie is. And like, I don't know how he managed to be harder on himself in a more smart way than you did.
Yeah,
so,
no.
I mean, I mentioned it earlier, but yeah, I would give this like a soft 2 out of 10. Like,
yeah.
It doesn't like offend me on like a human being basis, but like that's the only thing that it has going for it, is that it's like I have seen things that I like less than it, but I have no compliments to give it. None.
No, I mean, I can't. Yeah, I don't have a good word for it. 2 out of 10. If it maybe offended me more, it would be worse. But
there would also be virtue of more things to talk about.
Yeah,
if it offended me more, I would almost appreciate that. But
yeah, that's what we have to say on these 2 films. If you've seen them, please tell us what you think of our reviews.
What you think about the movies too.
What you think about the movies too. Yeah.
And our favorites, and just this in general. Is there anything that, like, we're covering? We have a lot of things that we want to cover, but that said, we are totally open to taking suggestions for topics, ideas, themes, anything we want to talk about, just things that we have up on the docket for the future, just as a little bit of a tease. August and I have gone through the recap movies of the series Code Geass, and we will eventually be tackling that series in its entirety as sort of a retrospective because of the new Code Geass anime that is coming out this year. So that's going to be quite interesting.
Yeah.
We are doing, as we uploaded a video of us doing it a few months ago, we are going to be talking about the Fate franchise in its entirety. The whole fucking thing. We're going to be talking about the 2 Heaven's Feel movies that have been released, and eventually we're going to be talking about the 3rd one, which is supposed to release this year.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a new release. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about everything we can. We're seriously going to be talking about both anime. We're talking about Zero. We're talking about visual novels. We're talking about fucking everything, because we want to chronicle all of that as like just basically to have an archive of something so long and stupid. And there's also
a project so long and pretentious that we can feel satisfied by it.
Yes, because we're both obsessed with series that have stupidly long lore. We're also eventually we might get around to doing this Code Geass spin-off series Akito the Exiled, just because it's an interesting fucking weird thing.
And for reference, for anyone who does not know us, we have controversial opinions on Code Geass,
which we will go over them. Which, I mean, like, and don't judge us too quickly. They're not all negative, but you might want to hear what we have to say.
No. Yeah.
We will be talking. We have discussed talking about the Bleach movies. We have talked about something we're definitely going to be doing because of what happened. Is we're talking about the Ava rebuild movies. We tossed around the idea of talking about varieties and just parts of Yu-Gi-Oh, which definitely want to do that. There is a new adaptation of an older anime and visual novel series called Higurashi, which we talked about throwing around that as well, because that's new. The works of Yoshiaki Kawajiri, who made Vampire Hunter D, Wicked City, Ninja Scroll, the anime Highlander movie,
Demon City, Shinjuku, all sorts of shit.
Yeah, just that dude's career. We're definitely doing, but will take some time. But will no doubt be entertaining, is Future Diary.
Yeah,
that's a show we wanted to talk about, and I actually didn't discuss this with you, but I found out we have to watch the Resident Evil movies. Not the live action ones. I'm talking about the animated ones.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm going to show you something after this, as a matter of fact, to entice you. But we're going to talk about those. Those are just ideas. If any of those sound appealing, let us know what you want to talk about. Or if you have your own, shout it our way. We will be happy to receive that.
Or if you have your own ideas, tell us. No JoJo.
Yeah, look, we to some extent or another, and of different parts, we are both JoJo fans, but like that is a rabbit hole that we will never come back from.
No, that is,
and we're doing Fate, so that's saying something.
That's Fate is not deep, is a deep rabbit hole, not as deep as JoJo's. If we ever do cover anything JoJo's related, we should cover the OVA that Satoshi Kon was a key animator on. He also directed some episodes of that.
Yeah, that's something we might cover one day. But yeah, we're covering basically anything in the medium that strikes our fancy.
Anything and everything that's not too long.
Yep, I mean, you will not be seeing us covering the entirety of of Bleach in like all of it. Yeah. Like go watch the Super Eye Patchable video if you want that shit, because I can't do it.
But thank you for watching. Tune in next time, whenever it happens.